All right, hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Kicking It with KeKe, Life, Love, and Mindset, where we keep it real, we keep it honest, and we grow through what we go through. Okay. Now, today, we are kicking it with a man who knows what it means to perform at a high level and sustain it. From being a Division 1 athlete to now a high performance coach and founder of a science first fitness platform designed for ambitious professionals in midlife. Chris Ryan, you are here today, kicking it with me. Thank you for
Yes,
coming through. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. And for the viewers out there, we were just talking about we're both a little nasally with the pollen going on. I'm up in the New York area. Kiki's down there in Louisiana, and it doesn't really matter where you're at. If you're down in like this whole like eastern half of the United States, there's just a lot floating around in end of April. So apologies if we sound a little bit like we need some antihistamines or something.
Absolutely, absolutely. I know I have the drainage today, so y'all excuse
Yeah.
me. All right, so we're gonna, did I miss anything? I know we talked about you being a husband and a father of three. Is there
Mhm.
anything else you want to share with the listeners about who you are?
I think I'm a student of life as well. I think I try to like make sure that I live each and every day the best I can. I love to empower people. I love to lead people to be their best selves. That's why I'm in the health and fitness world in the first place. And truth be told, it's just something that was like my higher calling in life. Like I felt like I had been in different acumens of the business world before, owning a brick and mortar style business in my 20s, and then successfully leading that and selling that with 20 plus employees. And that sort of thing. And then also being part of Mir and that was eventually bought up by Lululemon, and being part of the Lululemon umbrella and the company since. So for me, it's just been really cool to be an entrepreneur my whole life, and being a business person my whole life and applying those business principles across any sort of business, but in my own world of the health and fitness niche. And it's been so fun to see how many people I've empowered and how many people I've helped achieve their health and fitness goals and their longevity goals and still do to this day. So that's what gets me up out of bed each and every day, besides our little toddler, of course, saying, Daddy, make me pancakes.
Nice, I love it. All right, so we're gonna move into our mindset moment. How
Mhm.
has your journey from a Division 1 athlete to coach shaped how you approach life today?
Oh, that's a pretty deep question. I love it right out of the gate. For me, I think what it is that when you're a Division 1 athlete, you're really at that like dang near like pro level of performance, right? In this day and age of NIL and transfer portal, you pretty much are a pro athlete in college now, right?
Right.
So, um, but back in the '90s when I was competing in the early 2000s, for me, definitely dating myself there. But for me back then, what it was is like I had achieved a certain amount of success, right, at that point in my life, but I didn't. It kind of defines you up to that point because when you're competing as you're a kid and then you play. I'm a big fan of playing multiple sports at a young
Mhm.
age, and then usually in high school you might like try to like really excel at one or two different sports, which is totally cool as well, or play as many sports as possible, whatever you really want to do. And for me, track and field was like just like kind of I started out with a lot of soccer and basketball and those types of sports, and then playing a bunch of other things from like playground sports and all that in elementary school. And then I gradually I saw more success in track field by the time I was in the middle of high school. So really started concentrating on that and then working out in the weight room and everything on building speed and power and working on my endurance. I was a middle distance runner. So that was a lot of fun, but it was pretty defining of who I was. I was a student athlete. And then I got, I made it to a very high level in the elite program at the University of Florida. Go Gators! And so I made it there, but it was a program that definitely like took its pound of flesh from me personally because it was so competitive. My body only had so much to give, and it's funny when you're competing at that level, you're always on the brink of like an injury or always on the brink of being sick because you have to push yourself so hard because your
Right.
competition level is so high. And when I look back on this, like literally a quarter century later, as a grown man who's very comfortable in my own skin, who's been successful in the business world, has a beautiful wife and three amazing children. I couldn't, picture a better life for myself. But when I look
Mhm.
back on myself at, 18, 19, 20, 21 years old, I'm kind of like, you know what? Like, don't worry about like what's going on at that point in your life. Worry about like the end goal or end view in mind. And worry more about like your degree, the institution of which you're going to, your majors, keeping your grades up, having fun up to a point. Not too much fun. Like, you have to be serious as a student athlete, but also realize you only get one go around in college too. And just because you were good enough to get there doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stay there. I was just doing a podcast yesterday with a younger trainer. He's in his late 20s, but he played football at Columbia University, an Ivy League school.
Mhm.
And he played running back for them, and he played for 2 years, and his grades weren't exactly where where he wanted him to be, and he's a little bit lost. And this is at an Ivy League school, an
Right.
ultimate academic institution. But sometimes when you are a student athlete, it's great until it's not. And
Right.
sometimes knowing when to say when in life is okay too. And I think that's very empowering to say, okay, I pretty much have exhausted. It's not that you're quitting, it's saying that I have literally, like, I'm a wet sponge and I've wrung that sponge dry as far as my capability. And it's okay. Like, there's nothing more that I can give. And like, I wasn't getting rehab for the injuries as quick as I wanted, because every time I would get back out there, my hamstring would tear again and that sort of a thing. It just became one thing after another after another. And so for me, it was like learning that process. I really enjoyed the rehab process of learning from the physical therapists and the team doctors and like the trainers and everyone else, and kind of seeing like how a team behind the scenes works together, not just your coaches. And
Right.
and so being at such a great program, you kind of saw all those pieces work together. So I started really learning from it. I didn't technically have like a exercise sports science or medical background, but I really learned a lot. And then I realized that in my 20s, I got more in the business world. I did internships in an investment banking and consulting, and I was an econ major and an international relations major, and did an internship overseas and in Washington, D.C. And so it kind of had more of like a very corporate business side going for me. But
Mhm.
then it was like along the same side that I wanted to be an entrepreneur too. So ended up building a business with my brother in Florida, and then we sold that when I was 28 years old. But what had got me through that time in my 20s was always health and fitness, always staying true to who I was as an athlete. Because I feel like everyone's an athlete. You just might not tap into your inner athlete often enough for a lot of people out there in this day and age, unfortunately. And
Mhm.
so I was able to stay healthy, stay fit, stay sane as you're building a business. And I realized like when I sold that business, what could I do to like build another business around me as a personal brand, around something that I truly love, the health and fitness world, empowering people, leading people to be their best selves. And so that's when I said, okay, I want to, be an elite trainer. I want to like train great people. I want to train people to be their best selves. So I moved to New York City. I had some friends up in this area of the woods, and moved up to New York City on a hope and a dream, built a great business, started doing some fitness modeling as well. I was signed to Wilhelmina, a big modeling agency,
Nice.
and a representation. But I always had a business head on, or a business wearing my business hat. So I would go on these shoots and I would meet with people from like Nike and Under Armour and Lululemon, and kind of network within those people, not just being the person in front, in front of the camera, but with the magazine world, especially. I said, hey, if you ever need help on articles, these are my certifications that I have, and like told them who I was. And I had my CSCS and my CPT with the NSCA, which are great designations within the fitness world. And so they were like, oh, wow, you actually know what you're talking about. You're not just like a guy in front of the camera and that sort of thing, the talent, as you're called, on set. And so I
Right.
started like getting phone numbers and emails of all these folks, and like doing things for free and gratis as much as possible. And then, eventually started getting paid for articles, or being the fitness expert within the article, where the journalist or the media person was interviewing somebody for, oh, these are 5 great exercises for, whatever, like that, those types of articles for the likes of Men's Health, Women's Health, Men's Fitness, Shape Magazine, and everyone from Reader's Digest to LA Times and a bunch of different media outlets. And, worked on almost like 250 plus articles over the course of the next several years. And now it's the podcast world, and that's why we're here, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then so that media world kind of changed a little bit, and now the podcast world exists, and so that's why I do a lot of podcasts now. And I love doing it because it gets me out there in a different marketplace. It gets me to meet amazing folks like yourself and really get out there and spread my message and my, with the world as much as possible. Being positive, realizing that you only have one life to live. What can you do today to be your best self? And why is health and fitness so important to whomever you are in this world? And so that really speaks volumes to me. And I signed on with Mir and Lululemon. That was eventually Mir was eventually bought out by Lululemon and was the
Mhm.
first vertical position at home fitness device. And back in 2018, and you could work out and see yourself in the mirror, which was so cool. And I was one of the top trainers on the Mir platform and the top categories of strength training and cardio based training and stretch and mobility workouts. And so did all that, and we were bought out by Lululemon, and then my contract ended in January 2024. And I said, you know what? I have a great community. I love what I've done so far, but I think I want to do it on my own. And that's when I came out with the Chris Ryan Fitness app. So this is going on almost 2 years now. The app being out in the wild, if you will. And
Mhm.
it's been growing my community ever since with the Chris Ryan Fitness app and doing live and on-demand workouts. I've a catalog of 700 plus workouts in the on-demand catalog for beginners to intermediate to advanced level strength and mobility based workouts and cardio boot camp style workouts. So you don't need a lot of equipment, just some dumbbells, some bands, body weight exercises. And it's mainly for like at home so that people can, curb excuses, if you will, because sometimes driving 20 minutes to the gym or half hour, 45 minutes, or even 10 minutes to the gym can be daunting on people, especially if you're like we had talked about before we started this podcast, like you're a parent, you have kids at home, you're burning the midnight oil at both ends, you're burning the candle at both ends with your
Mhm.
spouse or your partner in life, and you're like, hey, we need to stay fit, but maybe I only have time for a 20-minute workout. That's okay. Like 20 minutes is better than 0 minutes. You don't always need an
Mhm.
hour. You don't always need to have like the perfect gym setting and all this stuff. And you can do great workouts for yourself for your own longevity if you just train for 20, 30 minutes a few times a week. You'll be amazed at what you can do. And if you can train more than that, all the power to you. But especially if
Mhm.
you couple that with eating healthy. So I had nutrition put in there as well. So every month there's all new healthy nutrition, plant and meat based recipes on the app as well. So that they just accumulate all these great meal plans and recipes for folks out there that are relatively achievable. We're not, cooking filet mignon. They're relatively simple. But also when you see something that's healthy visually, you're like, hey, that looks good. I realize that healthy eating can be good. It's not that
Mhm.
it tastes bland or bad. And thankfully for me, my wife's Greek American, so she cooks Mediterranean all the time, and I love it. So she takes good care of the Ryan family on that front. And my taste buds, my health and longevity on the nutrition side. But it's fun to share some of those recipes and with my fitness community as well.
Absolutely. I love that. Congratulations. I love
Thank
to
you so
hear
much.
it.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So, what's a hard truth that you've had to accept about showing up in your relationships while chasing your big goals?
That's a good one. Hard truth I've had to accept. I think that realizing that you need to be the best version of yourself to be the best version for everyone else in your life that you love and that you owe something to, whether it's your colleagues, your boss, your clients, your whatever you're doing in the business world or in your professional setting, and your spouse, your kids. So if you can be the best version of yourself, you'll be the best version for everyone else that you touch and affect in the daily life, right?
Hmm.
And I mean that not to so much be selfish with your time and everything else, but to pay yourself first. Maybe you have to get up a little earlier before your kids get up, or or you have to get in your workout earlier than you normally would because you have a commute to work and you have an early deadline or whatever. But like, if you can be disciplined and consistent in your process for yourself, you are arguably be so much better for everyone else with whoever you come in contact with for the rest of the day. And I mean that. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be a morning workout person. It just means that make sure within the day that you get your workout in, if at all possible, and make it kind of like a no brainer, like something that you physically have to do, just as you would like drink water and breathe air and eat food
Hmm.
and give your loved ones hugs. You would say, okay, I got to work, I got to move my body for 20 or 30 minutes. And not even sometimes that I have to, it's more that I get to. Like, how cool is it? You get to work out today, you get to exercise, you get to move your body. Because guess what? A lot of people can't, you know, like a lot
Right,
of people for a whole host of reasons can't do that. And
right.
you ask people that physically can't do that sort of a thing anymore, whether they're older, maybe they're sick, something happened in their lives, from an accident, and they can't do what they normally used to do. They'd do anything to have that back. So the fact that you actually can, how empowering is that for yourself, you know?
Absolutely. And one in particular is my dad. He had a stroke a couple of years ago and he's paralyzed really on his whole right side. So he was the active man's man. And now he's like,
Mm,
I wish I could do the things that I want to do that I used to do. So I tell anybody, you only have one body, be good to it so it could be good to you.
yeah, I'm sorry to hear about your father. My dad just passed. We're coming up on a year of anniversary of his passing, end of last May. And
Mhm.
he was always active, always worked out until the very end. And like, even like, he had like problems with his hands. It wasn't arthritis. It was called Duppenheimer's disease, like where it's like just almost like arthritis, but where your hands become almost contracted and he couldn't like grab a barbell anymore. But he
Right,
could like figure out a way to like, he never was a guy that worked out on machines, but he was able to go to the gym and work out in this like, he always would text me about his like press workout that he would do with some sort of like shoulder overhead press because it was like the one thing he could physically do to feel strong in his
right.
upper body. You know, it was just hard to see him there at the end and where his body just kind of like gave out on him. But he really maximized whatever he had through his days, and so he was the epitome of like kind of like somebody I looked up to. It was like, hey, it wasn't perfect. He wasn't an Olympic level athlete. He wasn't a pro athlete. He's a dentist by trade. He was an amazing father, and he coached my brother and I in sports growing up. And so thankful. And if anything, he got me, invested in my own health and fitness at a young age. So I was able to really take myself to that next level. And so he definitely set the foundation for myself within like the health and fitness world where I don't even think twice about working out. And now I'm able to empower so many other people, but especially the people in my household and my wife and my own children, to say, hey, look, this is what we do as a family. This is like a non-negotiable for ourselves. And this is something that our children will carry forward for the rest of their lives. And my wife will be healthy and happy and fit for, decades and decades ahead. And hopefully we're this, old couple in their 80s or 90s that can like, might not be like getting
You're
after
walking
it as
around.
hard as we do now, but maybe we'll be like walking around, like that sort of a thing, or playing tennis
Yeah,
together, or lifting 2 pound dumbbells together, whatever it might be. And I think that's cute and an amazing thing to like strive for. So I'm excited, but I'm not wishing
absolutely.
not wishing the decades, away in any way. But I do think that when you can kind of see that end goal in mind of being active grandparents, if you will, and how important that is. I think that's going to be really cool to have at that point in our life, rather than being like the grandparents that like can't throw a ball with their grandkid or like can't chase the little toddler around the yard for a couple
Right.
minutes or whatever. Like, not having to slip and fall so you're in the hospital with a broken hip or something in your 80s. Like,
Mhm.
I don't want to have that. And I want to like live a full life regardless of like anything else. Like a full life to me is a healthy life.
Absolutely. My condolences about your dad. I know that's hard,
Thank you.
but
Yeah,
it
thank
sounds
you.
like he was a great person, because I could see when you light up when you talk about him. So that speaks
Yeah, thank
volumes.
you. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah, no, he was an amazing person, and yeah, I honor him every day.
absolutely. So what daily habit would you suggest for anyone who is listening to help them build a discipline around
Hmm.
motivation that isn't there at the moment? So what would you suggest?
I think aim small, miss small. Like if you just aim for something small and achievable and try to be as repetitive as possible about it, so that you set yourself up for inherent success. Like if you have never run and you say, I want to run a marathon, well, guess what? There might be an easier way to do it. Maybe you should just say, I'm going to walk for 5 minutes today and just say, I'm going to add 1 minute of walking every day. So the next day, I'm going to walk for 6 minutes or whatever it might be, like whatever that super small mini goal might be, but something that you are going to hit a base hit no matter what as you like live and breathe today, right? Like whatever that goal might be. Sometimes it might be like you already have a good base and you have to set up a goal, maybe some sort of race or competition or whatever it might be. Maybe it's with your spouse, maybe it's within your community, someone from your church or somebody that like maybe it's a sibling. but somebody that can hold you, accountable a little bit more. Maybe it's a coach, and figure out a way to like work with that person to achieve your overall goals, right? Where you can say, okay, I just need to like work out for 5 minutes today or 10 minutes today. I just add a little bit, whatever that might be. Like maybe it's 3 rounds of 10 body weight squats, right? Like you just want to be able to get off the toilet and on your own power and get off a dining room chair or your office chair or whatever. And so you just, you want to say, I need to learn how to squat. I need to strengthen my legs. I don't want to have a slip and fall like my parents did or whatever. And sometimes it does take a scare in your life.
Hmm.
Maybe someone close to you passed away, or, you always hear about it. Like I'm 46 now. I just turned 46 last week. And I hear, there's always like a random death through like somebody in their 40s died of a heart attack. Like just maybe
Right.
it's several people removed, especially for men for whatever reasons. It could be stress, it could be lifestyle, could be genetics, whatever it is. And it's like, holy cow, that dad had 2 kids or 3 kids or 4 kids. Like he wasn't overweight, and like what the hell happened? And like
Hmm.
and so you think about it, and you might not have ever met this person, but because of like you're removed from like 3 other people, as like a cousin's boss or something like that, or but like you hear the story and you're like, oh my goodness. And you start to think of things a little differently than maybe you did as a kid or your teenage years or your 20s, even when you kind of are a little bit more self-absorbed and selfish because you're truly the only person that matters as a kid, right? Like
Right.
when you're a kid, you're kind of like you're in your own world. Like, of course, you love your mom and dad, but they're there to help you. Like, you're not there to technically help them, right? They're there to raise you.
Hmm.
You're not raising your parents, hopefully, right? So, although sometimes there are situations that that
Right.
are in the reverse there. But in general, the way that nature usually works is like the older generation raises the younger generation to be their best selves and take care of them and provide a safety net for them to stumble a trip and then pick themselves back up and then bring that back to the next generation, so
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's sometimes it does take a little health scare that for yourself or through few degrees removed from yourself, but you got to think like once again back to like I get to move my body, I get to exercise, I get to eat healthy. And sometimes when people think of diet, they always think of like remove or negativity, like things are removed that I can't have choices. And if there's anything like Americans really love is the independence and empowerment of making choices, right? Like we're like, yeah, I gotta like make
Yeah.
my own choices, land of the free. And that's amazing. I love our country. But at the same time, it's like, think of all the amazing choices you can make as a person, as an adult, to eat healthy, right? It's more about like kind of thinking ahead though, to where you make bad choices the hungrier you are. So if you go to the
Mm.
grocery store and you're really hungry, you're just like, I'm just like gonna open up this
Grabbing
box and just
everything.
start eating it or whatever. And like, but if you go to this grocery store and you stick to the outer edges of the aisle and maybe ate a meal an hour or two before you go, you're probably going to be like, yeah, you know what? I don't need that box of stuff. I need those healthy greens over there look a little bit better or whatever. I mean, it does take some thought process and meal prep sometimes to eat a little healthier. But once
Hmm.
again, back to being consistent. The same way, if you plan your workouts, you plan your week or month in advance, you're going to have more success. So if you plan your meals instead of just being like, oh my goodness, I have 10 minutes to eat and there's nothing in the fridge. So I'm just going to like grab a box of Cocoa Puffs and just inhale them, you know?
Right.
Um,
Hmm.
and that's whenever you're really like backs to the wall, that's when you make bad decisions usually, and
Right.
so it's more about like thinking ahead as much as possible and being organized and thoughtful in your planning process, whether it's your workouts, your nutrition, your businesses, your daily activities, your organization of your own life and your calendar and everything else. It'll empower you a lot more.
Absolutely. I hope you guys are listening because he is giving some amazing advice to start. Like we have to start somewhere and that you have to make it up in your mind that you want better for your life. And when you want better, you tend to do better and be consistent at it. I know for me, I looked in the mirror one day and didn't recognize who I was like years ago because I had a surgery and I couldn't move around for like 8 months. And my husband was just giving me comfort food. And I get mad at him because I'm like, what? I was like, I just wanted to make sure that you was okay. So I decided that I was gonna go walking, so I had to get this weight off me. And I would go walking 5 times a week. I would cry when it rained because I couldn't go because I had a specific place that I wanted to go walk. I like to go outside and be with nature. And so I dropped 65 pounds and keeping it off. I changed, it was a lifestyle change. I stopped eating meat. I gave up dairy, processed sugar, all the things that I loved when I was dealing with the healing process. I had to let them go because otherwise they would have killed me. So
Mhm.
it's all about making a health decision. You have to start somewhere.
I love that story. I love that story. And it's funny too. Sometimes, like, like people think that they're doing right by you, especially even our closest loved ones. And your husband sounds like an amazing guy. But at the same time, it's just like, you know, healthy, or excuse me, comfort food doesn't necessarily need to be unhealthy,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And not to say that you don't, and you also need to bat 100% in the healthy realm. If you're getting like 80% of the way there, 17 out of your 21 meals a week, give or take, are relatively healthy, you're going to be fantastic. Like, you do not need to like be eating greens and fish and nuts every day for the rest of
Mhm.
your life, right? Like, that's fantastic if that gets you going and like you feel good with that. But like, for the most part, like, you can have some red meat here and there. You can have a little bit of dairy, but maybe not every day, because they tend to be inflammatory for a lot of us. And not sometimes things are going to be okay for me and not for you, or okay for you and not for me, just with our genetic makeup. And like, we have a family history on my side with my paternal side that has heart ailments. And my dad had a quadruple bypass at 55, and he was thin and fit and he worked out every day. But his twin brother died at 54 of heart disease, and he lived an unhealthy lifestyle, and he smoked, and he drank a lot of alcohol and that sort of a thing. And so, my dad lived a clean, healthy lifestyle and then lived for another 25 years, I guess. Yeah, 25 years.
Mhm.
So, you know, I would argue that because he was healthy and was fit, fit, and he took decent care of himself, he was not perfect. He still liked his donuts. He drank Coke, like, and like a lot of sugar. But like, the baby boomer generation, they kind of had that like low fat, high sugar diet that we all know now is really bad for you. But
Mhm.
back in the 70s, 80s, 90s, they thought it was like good for you,
Mhm.
like don't eat anything with fat, but like, and fat was like a bad thing. So like low fat, like, but they put too much sugar and everything. So like that's what was ingrained in your head.
Right.
And but he lived a pretty healthy life for the next, like, up until his last year of his life. He was very healthy. And then things happened, and he passed on. But like, at the same time, like, because he was fit, he wasn't perfect, but he got another quarter of a century out of his body and a ton of memories, and and that sort of a thing. He didn't die when I was in college. He died when I was in my mid 40s, and he saw all three of his grandchildren, for years. Got to see
Right.
his son get married and all that stuff. Like, think of all those things that like people don't get to see because they live an unhealthy life.
Right.
And just because you should comfort your loved ones for sure, but just be careful of the way that you do comfort them, because sometimes people find comfort in foods, but comfort in food is okay as long as it's healthy. And I find
Right.
that like to be a low hanging fruit, and it's okay to have like once in a while to be like, oh, this is grandma's homemade pie or whatever. Awesome. Just don't eat grandma's homemade pie every day, please.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
like, it's okay. Like, I'm not like one of those people that's like, nope, you can never eat any sugar. You can never have an alcoholic drink or soda or whatever. And like, look, limit. That's it. Just like limit as much as you can. Realize that those are a nice little treat to have every once in a while, but not something that should be a daily occurrence for yourself.
Absolutely. Everything in moderation. Everything in
Mm-hmm.
moderation. But that broke me because I was like, you know what? These sweats are just getting a little bit too comfy and I can't fit
Yeah.
anything in my closet. So I have to do something about this.
Was that the turning point for you, that like stuff just didn't start feeling right, or you didn't feel good in your body or your own skin, or like what was the actual turning point for yourself?
I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't feel myself. I felt sluggish. I didn't want to do
Yeah.
anything. When people asked me to go do stuff, I was like, I don't have anything to wear. So no, I'm good. I'm gonna stay at home. And I would find myself staying at home, isolating myself from people. And I'm not that person. So
No,
I
I can
had
tell. No, obviously not.
I had to do something to change that. And I felt so much better when I started to see the difference and
Yeah.
experience the energy burst and not have to rely on a Coke or a Dairy Queen Blizzard or something to feel
Yeah.
better. Yeah, so yeah, it was just all about the mindset. My mindset had to change.
Hmm. Yeah, that's
Hmm.
so cool because it sounds like you caught it at that right point too,
Yeah.
where it got away from you a little bit, but it didn't get away from you so much to where it became a lifestyle change and a choice on your end, where you were
Hmm.
like, oh, something's not right and I don't like the way I feel. And a lot of times what happens is people like, that's kind of that demarcation line in the sand for them. Either they go down one track or another. Like either
Hmm.
they're just like accepting of like, I missed my workouts. I gained 65 pounds. This is who I am now. This is normal. Right. And like sometimes in America, you see it, or in the Western world, like, like we're a developed country. We have all this access to information and medicine and food. Like, for the most part, like we're taken care of as a country up to a point, as far as like, we don't have to, most people don't have to worry about their next meal all the time. Right. It's more about like, we have access to a lot, which tends to make us a little bit gluttonous in our overall ability to, put on weight, if
Hmm.
you will. And then you look at your neighbor to your left and your neighbor to your right, and you're like, hey, Bob and Jim both look this way. So it's okay for me to look this way too. And actually, my belly's only a little bit over my belt buckle. Bob's is like well over his belt buckle, and Jim's, has no muscle and his shoulders all sloped and he's a skinny guy with the whatever it might be that you rationalize in your head. And then you look in the mirror and you're like, hey, I'm not half bad, because like I look to the neighbor to my left and my neighbor to the right, and I'm better than both of them. But when you're kind of comparing yourself to that type of person, you're not really comparing yourself to like what you truly could be as a whole. And that's why like lifting everyone out and making all three of us make the right choice and say, hey, look, all three of you guys can be a little bit better. And it's not about
Yeah.
being a drill sergeant and being mean about it or anything like that. It's like, actually, like, no, the science is there. We go back 3 generations, everyone looked a heck of a lot different, right?
Right.
You know, you go back to like that, World War II generation, there wasn't people that looked like we all do now, for the
Right.
vast majority of folks. And yeah, we had just got out of the Great Depression, and there's, a lot of hunger scares and everything else. But at the same time, people are eating generally more organic foods. They were eating
Mhm.
home cooked meals. They weren't eating processed foods out of a box, that sort of
Right.
thing. So it's just, there's a lot more work with your hands and like where you're physically working a little bit more. Whereas now everything under the sun is on computers. Like I'm in the fitness industry and I sit for 12 hours a day because I'm either doing podcasts, I am working on the app, I am training clients online, I'm writing programs for my executive training program, whatever it might be. So like literally I am working for like 60 hours a week seated in front of a computer. So for me to move my body afterward, it's like a great thing, So
I
and I'm
get
sure
it.
you are too. Like everyone,
Mhm.
most professions in this day and age are in front of a computer one way or another for many hours a day. Whether it's 6, 10, 12 hours, 15 hours sometimes. I've trained folks in the New York City area that 15-hour work days are the norm. It's like, whoa, I can't imagine that.
Right.
Like,
Right.
and not just 5 days a week either. It's like sometimes 6 or 7 days a week. So
Right. Yeah, it's very challenging because I work 10-hour days in front of a computer, and it's hard to move around sometimes. So you have to have that discipline to say, hey, when I go on my 15-minute break, let me go outside and get a lap in or something like that. So
totally.
yeah,
And I always tell people
absolutely.
like if you have the ability to take a conference call, go for a walk. Like put in your AirPods
Yeah.
or put in your Bluetooth or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Throw your phone. If you don't need to like actually physically take notes or whatever. And now there's a lot of AI apps you can actually take notes from your phone call that'll take better notes than you could as a person, so that you
Right.
could just like go for a walk and you sound better when you're walking and talking. You probably have clearer thoughts. You're out in nature. Like all of it
Hmm.
is such a good win-win for everybody. So I tell that to people a lot. Like get out of your office, even if you're in a city, like in the heart of New York City, or you're in a rural area or the suburbs, like we both live in the suburbs now. And it's just like, you can go walk around your neighborhood or walk down the street or back. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, like where you put on my sneakers and my sweatsuit or whatever. It could just be like you're
Yeah.
wearing your normal clothes and just like walk. You're not going to get
Yep.
sweaty walking, well, Louisiana summers, like outside.
It'd be brutal.
But like, and New York and the New York area summers, they're bad too. Like summers in the the Gulf or the East Coast can be kind of in the Midwest can be kind of hard. But
Hmm.
other than that, but go for a walk in the morning or in the evening. But
Right.
other than that, like try not to go right in the heat of the day because you might need to change your shirt afterward and being all sweaty. But for the most part, you're gonna get decent weather and you can like go in and out and like it's cool to be exposed to Mother Nature, whether it's hot, cold, snowy, rain,
Hmm.
grab an umbrella, whatever it is. Like just go outside and it's so good and healthy for you. And
Right.
walking is one of the easiest low hanging fruits a human being can do to like just you lost 65 pounds by walking. Were you doing anything else like strength training or were you at the
I
time that
was
you
doing
lost your weight?
I was doing yoga
Oh yeah. So great. So yoga, how many days a week were you doing yoga?
3 days a week, and I was walking 5 days a week.
Awesome. And so how many miles or minutes were you walking per like session, give or take?
Per session, I was walking at least an hour. I would give myself an hour each time. Around Southeastern is if you walk at one time, it's like almost 2.5 miles. And
Oh,
so I
okay,
was walking
cool.
it twice, so 5 miles every time that I was going. So I was, and I really wasn't worrying about the distance. I was just like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
walk for an hour every time I
Good
go.
for you.
And
And
then
would you
sometimes my
and
sister
you
would
could you have a
would come.
conversation?
Uh-huh.
And you were at a conversational pace, right? Like you weren't like were you speed
Oh
walking or
no,
were you just kind of like,
sometimes
yeah,
it all
yeah,
depends. Like if I had other people with me, I would kind of like slow my pace or whatever. But if it
yeah.
was me and I was on a mission, I would pick up the speed a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
I love it. I love it. But like that's something that's achievable for most people to do, right? Like let's face it, like 65 pounds overweight, that's a decent amount of weight that you had to lose and you were still able to do it. And just
Mhm.
by doing yoga 3 days a week, and how was your nutrition? Did you curb that a little bit and like steer it
Oh
in the
yeah,
right
when I
direction?
say I like cut out a lot of stuff because I stopped eating meat because it didn't digest well. So when I
Yep.
would go to the doctor, and my doctor was like, "You're just gonna have to give it up," and I was
Yep.
like, "Chicken too?" She was like,
Yeah.
"Yes, chicken too."
And what about fish? Did you give up fish or
I
no?
do. I'm a pescatarian, so I do
Okay,
the
pescatarian.
seafood and
Oh, that's
stuff like
great.
that.
And you
But
eat,
yeah,
and
I
now you're
just
losing. Do you eat a lot of fried food, or no? Did
no,
you cut out fried foods?
no.
Yeah, so you cut
Mm-mm.
out. So you all the inflammatory foods you really cut out, like the dairy. Dairy's
Yep.
especially like I don't like my body doesn't do good with dairy. I don't think I'm technically. I guess I've never been tested, but I don't think I'm like. I just don't think I process dairy that well. Like I could have a
Hmm.
glass of milk and be okay. I just don't have like a glass of milk every day, or yogurts every day, or like any sort of like ice cream and things like that. I was like ice
Hmm.
cream, especially dairy with sugar for me is like a no go. Like it just does not make me feel good. And they're very
Hmm.
inflammatory,
Right.
within your body. And so the inflammation in your body is something that's really hard to get rid of, and that's something that
Right.
causes like bloat or soreness. Because
Hmm.
exercise should push you, of course, right? Especially if you're training hard, but you shouldn't
Hmm.
be like in this purgatory zone of like constantly being sore or just not feeling like good about yourself, right? Like when you walked, you naturally released endorphins and everything else, and you felt good about yourself,
Hmm.
right?
And I wasn't in
And
pain. Like I was not in
yeah,
pain, and I don't think that's one of the reasons why a lot of people shy away from exercise. I do believe they feel like, oh, I'm gonna be hurt and I'm gonna be in pain the next
totally.
day. But
Yeah, you're
your
gonna be in
food
pain if you're
choices play
not.
a different
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
But your food choices
Like
play a big part in that too, like your recovery.
mhm,
Yeah.
totally, 100%. And that's another thing too. I talk about this a lot. Is like I would actually argue that sleep is probably one of the most important things you could do with like nutrition and fitness, whether it's strength training, cardio, or a little combination of both,
Hmm.
or another modality like yoga or Pilates, that sort of a thing. I'm a fan of all those across the board, and I think you do what you like to do because if you like to do something, the odds of you showing up and be consistent with that are going to
Right.
be that much more, right?
Hmm.
But I do think that there's certain inherent variables of like getting your heart rate up a little bit, getting a little bit of a strength going will help yourself for longevity purposes and or whatever your goal is and maybe a sport in life. Like let's say you like to play pickleball or you like to play tennis or you want to shoot, run full court basketball with your community church league or whatever it might be,
Hmm.
you play an adult sports league in some way, shape, or form. Like figure out like what that sport is and realize that even pickleball, you are moving laterally, side to side, and backwards and forwards. And unfortunately, for many people, they barely move, let alone only forward. So for them to go
Hmm.
out and play pickleball, it's like an orthopedist's dream because there's like constant ACL, MCL injuries in the knees, Achilles tendons, and all that. It's not to say that you shouldn't play pickleball. I'm a fan of moving your body, but sometimes people think I can play pickleball, and I'm like, you might only be 45, but you haven't moved laterally in 20 years or
Right.
25 years maybe. So like, what do you think? Like you sit for 12 hours a day and you're just going to all of a sudden pick it up and then you're going to be frustrated because you got injured. Like
Hmm.
realize that a certain amount of strength and mobility training is going to take you to a whole other level that's super, super basic. Like you don't need to necessarily work out for 7 days a week, but even a couple days a week of like just doing certain patterns for yourself will
Hmm.
translate over to your overall health and fitness and like whatever your maybe your sporting goals or your daily goals are going to be to where
Hmm.
you are going to be able to play or work out or exercise without pain because you shouldn't be in pain. You might be like, oh, that was hard.
Right.
You know, your lungs, you're perspiring and your biceps are a little sore and your shoulders feel like they got to work out. But overall, like you should recover by the next day. And if you find yourself like with DOMS or delayed onset muscle soreness for days on end, it probably means that you're working out a little too hard. Maybe
Too
dial
hard.
it back, take a rest day, get your sleep in and everything else and get your hydration in and all that. And at certain times of the year, we are making jokes earlier about Louisiana summers and New York summers. Like realize there's a seasonality, especially if you train outside, that you probably are maybe going to have to take an electrolyte packet, right? You are going to
Hmm.
have to like make sure you stay hydrated much more in the summer in Louisiana than you would in January. Like that's a
Right.
no brainer. But that's what's cool is kind of put you more in touch with Mother Nature and the seasonality of the weather patterns and just as a human being to be exposed to elements in general. Not everything needs to be 70 degrees, and
Right.
like 40% humidity and inside in the AC or whatever, like we all
Right.
want to be in. It's like we're constantly like, no, the heat's at 70, the AC's at 70. Like that's where we live, 15 hours a day in front of a computer. And we wonder why we become soft a little bit, right?
Right.
And that's why
Absolutely.
I love like training outside. I love like all sorts of cold weather, hot weather, as long as it's not
Hmm.
slippery where you're going to slip on ice or that sort of thing or
Right.
get hurt or injured or it's lightning
Hmm.
out. I mean, like, don't be stupid, but like
Right.
within reason, like expose yourself to be able to train in hot weather, cold weather, and all points in between. Once again, exclude lightning storms, exclude too icy, that sort of a thing. But even
Right.
if it's snowy out and you have good footing, like you can, like I think it's awesome to go for a hike or run in the forest, like in a trail or whatever, as long as it's like it's dirt, it's not ice, if there's snow on the
Right.
sides, that sort of thing, and you got sure footing, a okay,
Hmm.
you know.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of like training outside, so it's cool that you were able to achieve all that for
Yeah.
yourself, KeKe, like with like like following like a repetitive basic pattern. I mean, you probably tell me like when you started out, how did you start out?
I just would drive to the college and just walk. I
And
think
then
it was
what was
more
your
so
first
to
walking
clear
workout?
my, I think it was more
Yeah,
so to get out of the house and clear my mind because I needed to change the scenery after being laid
yeah,
up for 8 months. And then I'm like,
totally,
you know what? I love the air. And then you meet people that's doing the same thing. And then
totally.
you get familiar with these people. So you look forward to seeing them. They look forward to seeing you. And next thing
Community,
you know, it's
community.
like, wait a minute.
Yep.
I've been walking around here for a couple of times now. Okay, my pants getting a little, looser now. I'm starting to look a little better, not as pale,
Hmm.
I'm starting to sleep better at night. And so that for me was because I was an insomniac. Like, I
Hmm.
slept when I was able to sleep. Sometimes that was in the middle of the day where I should have been doing other stuff. And I just took on that pattern, like, okay, I sleep when I sleep, whatever, and missing out on my family time and going to spend time with friends and things like that. And I just didn't want to be that person. So I just started walking. I say, you know what? I'm gonna just make a commitment to myself to at least
Hmm.
do it 3 times a week. And I got
Yeah,
so used to doing it, it was like, this is a no-brainer for me.
I love it, and it's such a easy thing to do. It doesn't cost any money,
Hmm.
right? Like you
Hmm.
literally just like walk out your door and like walk. And
Hmm.
that's so cool. And like sometimes people think they need to have, expensive gym memberships and that sort of a thing. I'm like, no, you don't really need like even if you wanted to add in like a couple dumbbells for your home. That's why I developed my app the way that I did is because it's like dumbbells don't break. Like they're not machines, right? Like
Right.
dumbbells will be here after you're gone. Like let's face it,
Hmm.
like they're a piece of metal or like rubber, rubber or whatever. Like they're not
Right.
going anywhere. like that'll be here for centuries. But like in some resistance bands or even just your body weight, like
Hmm.
for the most part, like very inexpensive that will last a long, long time, and the ability to like couple in some strength training elements with walking, for instance, like you're going to cover 80-90% of your basis right there, and then add in some like yoga or other things that you personally like to do that
Hmm.
you feel strongly about, like all the power to it. It doesn't, sometimes the fitness world and you watch the social media world, they try to like make things very complex for clicks or for like the hook, if you will, on the social media platform where it's like they're challenging some norm. And I'm like, no,
Hmm.
it's like, like it's not complex. It's being consistent that is the most important thing. Sometimes things look really cool for a video and like you'll watch it, and I see it all the time. I find myself watching a video. I'm like, wow, that person's amazing. But guess what? Like you're still amazing if you just show up and be consistent for yourself and walking,
Right.
and doing that activity. And if anything, I think that's even better because you're doing something that a lot of people can do and a lot of people choose not to do. And it's such an easy thing for people to do if they just do it with
Hmm.
amazing results. Like you lost 65 freaking pounds
Yeah.
because you just started walking 5 days a week, right?
Yeah.
Like, think about it. And then the yoga on top of that was kind of like, that
Hmm.
little extra thing that was like a sweet reward for all of a sudden, well, I've lost weight and now I can move my body a little bit better. So when I do yoga, I feel better and stronger at yoga because I don't weigh as
Hmm.
much. Like it's like a
Hmm.
double-edged sword of positivity, if you will. Like where you lose weight, you move better, you feel better, your clothes fit better, you look better, you sleep better, so you recover
Hmm.
better. Like
Right.
a lot of times when you're eating like comfort foods that are very high in sugar, you have irregular sleep patterns, or if the alcohol is involved, you don't get in that deep REM sleep that is so important for folks. And it's just like it's a like a really like downward spiral or an upward spiral, but it's your choice at the end of the day.
At the
So,
end of the day, it's your choice. Yes. So
mhm.
before we go, Chris, I want you
Yes.
to let the people know how they can connect with you if they want to work with you, where you hang out on social media, website, all the things. Let us know.
Oh, you're the best. Thank you so much for the plug. So chrisryanfitness.com, CHRISRYANFITNESS, just like it sounds, chrisryanfitness.com. That's my website. It has all the information on the Chris Ryan Fitness app. It's also available for download in the App Store for Apple, as well as in the Google Play Store for Android users. And what's cool is you can scan it right on into your smart TV from the app on your mobile phone. You can have it in your laptop, your iPad. You can download workouts in when you have Wi-Fi to play them at the beach or out in nature in a park or wherever where maybe there isn't Wi-Fi and you can stream them there out in nature. And then that's the app side. I'm also on Instagram at Chris Ryan Fitness as well, LinkedIn at Chris Ryan Fitness. I also do one-to-one executive style training for folks in the business world as well. That if they're looking for somewhere in between like personal training and the app, and they need some sort of more of accountability style performance coaching, I do that as well, and do personalized programming and accountability coaching for those folks as well. So there's a number of ways that I've seen the marketplace develop and been asked by clients and members and people I come in contact with. And so that's how I listen to the marketplace and I say, oh, well, that's interesting. There's more folks out there that need that. So let me offer that service too. So, I'm always thinking with that business mind and making sure that I could cast my net as wide as possible to help empower people to be their best selves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love it. I love it. So, Chris, it has been amazing having you here. Thank you for coming to kick
Thank
it
you
with
so
me.
much. Yes, of course. I love kicking with you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for tuning in to another episode. If this conversation resonated with you in any way, shape, or form, make sure that you subscribe, follow, and share. Until next time, make sure that you keep moving your body. But you got to start with your mindset first so that you can live the life that is more fulfilling and pleasing to you. Um, I am back every Thursday for a new episode of Kicking It with KeKe. Until next time, purple hugs. Later.